This video is about the importance of achieving high levels of quality to a business's operations and the quality management systems that they can put in place in order to try and achieve these high levels of quality. The business definition of quality is delivering a product or service which meets or exceeds customers' expectations. So customers are going to accept that there's going to be a trade-off between the price they pay for a product and the quality of that product or service. So it's really about giving customers good value for their money and exceeding their expectations for what they thought they would have got when they're going out to buy that product or service. And it's a really important part of business operations for a number of reasons. If you can improve quality, then you can have a really positive impact on sales volumes. So a higher quality product or service is going to mean there's likely to be more repeat business. So you get those returning customers coming back and buying your product again. But it also means that word of mouth is going to travel and you'll get more new and potential customers as well, helping to boost those sales figures. It's also potentially going to mean a higher selling price. So if you can increase quality, or at least the customer's perception of quality, then you're going to improve and increase the added value, which is the difference between the cost of those bought-in materials and what you're actually selling them for. So you get higher selling prices and more revenue from each sale. You could also potentially create a USP, or a unique selling point, around quality of your product or service, and that really leads into a combination of those two benefits above. But companies can really base their whole reputation around quality. It becomes their unique selling point and helps them to stand out from competitors. And this last one around cutting costs, I've actually put a question mark next to, because actually if you're trying to increase quality, then that's very likely to mean that your costs are potentially going to rise because you're buying in higher quality bought in materials. But if you can get quality right, then that's going to mean that there are fewer customer complaints, fewer product recalls in extreme situations, and less waste from having to scrap defective products. And so all of those things can help to cut costs across the long term as well. Businesses have a number of methods they can use to try and improve levels of quality within their organisation. And probably the most traditional of these would be using quality control systems. So that's when they monitor and check quality using inspection teams at the end of the production process. So with that, you're kind of creating a barrier between the finished product and the customer, because the most important thing really is not to let the customer down. And so quality control is trying to employ these teams to stop the possibility of this happening. You can also benefit with quality control teams from getting an overall overview of levels of quality across the organisation. And with these teams that are responsible for controlling quality, they can then pick up any issues as they arise. The downside to using quality control teams mainly lies in the cost. So employing teams just simply to monitor quality, is that a best use of your resources? Is that a best use of your staffing? Just having people checking that other people are essentially doing their job properly and producing the product to a proper level of quality. You could also argue that when it gets to the end of that process, it's in a way a little bit too late, and could you think about tackling those problems with quality a little bit earlier on in the process? And so that is what quality assurance systems are all about. So that's about making each member of staff responsible for their own output and ensuring in that way that quality is embedded throughout the whole organisation and throughout the entire production process. So the idea with that is that you're going to get it right first time. So you don't then need those quality control teams to check the output at the end of the process. And that can actually have quite a positive motivating effect on staff as well, if they can see that they're not being checked up on and they are being given responsibility for the quality of their output. But the possible downside to that is that you might find that it's increasing stress on individual employees because they're given that extra responsibility, and you've got to be really sure that they can then get it right if you're going to be removing that quality control department. Total quality management is quite similar in a way to quality assurance, because really it's a system of quality assurance. And it's a Japanese philosophy of building quality assurance through every part of the organizational culture. And so for that reason, the benefits and the problems are going to be very similar to quality assurance, but it's taking it probably one step more extreme, and it's making every fiber of the organization really to think about the levels of quality, and that whole culture is all about getting it right first time and getting quality absolutely spot on. So they talk about having internal customers, so every step of the process you're passing on your production to what you would imagine as a customer, and so it's absolutely crucial that you're going to get it spot on before you pass anything that you've produced onto the next stage of that production process. That's going to involve a complete upheaval really to the organizational culture, and so there can be really huge benefits if it's successful, but you may come across quite significant resistance from staff if you're making such a big change to their working practices. Quality circles are about having teams of employees meeting together to address issues and make improvements to quality systems. So that's really about thinking about staff as your best resource and empowering them to make their own improvements to quality systems. Possible downside to that is that if you are setting up and implementing these quality circles, then you are potentially taking staff away from what they should be doing in the main part of their job, and that could then have a potentially negative impact on productivity of output. And finally, we might think about kaizen systems, which is about making small and incremental changes, which over time can have a really substantial cumulative effect. So kaizen actually means continuous improvement. So it's about those marginal gains, which can then have a really big impact over time. And then at no point do you really need a complete overhaul of your systems, because you're constantly moving forward in those just slight marginal ways. So that's not just for quality, it actually can be utilised across all aspects of business. And actually the British Olympic cycling team got a huge amount of success from kaizening every aspect of their performance and making these tiny incremental improvements, which added up to a huge advantage over time. So if we were to be evaluating the usefulness of quality management systems to businesses, as ever with evaluation, we would want to weigh up the benefits of those quality management systems against any possible drawbacks and disadvantages. And actually, in terms of the benefits, we really have already spoken about those at the start of this video. So we spoke about the importance of quality in terms of developing a USP, a unique selling point for a business, which then enables them to charge a higher price. It then enables them to increase their sales quantities and help to boost their sales revenue in that way. We spoke also about the cost benefits that it can bring of getting it right first time and reducing the amount of scrap. So all of those things really important in bringing these benefits to businesses from really effective quality management systems. I think what's important as well, though, is using some really concrete business terms and business concepts in order to develop that analysis. So we could talk about the importance of a business developing a competitive advantage. So all of these benefits that we've been looking at, we could lead into that nice bit of terminology and say this will help a business to develop a competitive advantage against those rivals. And you can also bring in other business concepts from elsewhere in the course as well. So things like product life cycles. A really good quality product is likely to have a longer product life cycle, and this means that it's going to spend longer in the maturity phase of that life cycle, and so it's going to spend longer developing more sales and more profits as well. But you've got to balance that against the cost of these quality management systems. And there's not too much else really actually in the way of disadvantages of improving quality, I would say, other than these costs. And these costs can come from a variety of different sources. So you've got the cost of improving those materials and those inputs and getting higher quality going into the products, but you've also got the cost of the actual systems and the implementation of those systems. So think about TQM, total quality management. Embedding that culture of quality throughout the whole organization is going to be incredibly costly to implement, and it's really important to take your staff with you in that process in terms of buying into the whole thing, and making sure they're on board with it, because if they're not, then you're going to really struggle to implement that successfully.